In the northern reaches of the United States, hidden among endless forests and granite ridges, lay a small town called Silverridge. It was the kind of place people passed through without remembering. One main street, a gas station, a diner, a church, and a lake. Norwyn Lake. The lake sat several miles outside town, surrounded by dense pine woods and steep cliffs. Its water was unusually dark, almost black, even under direct sunlight. Locals avoided it after sunset. Nobody could explain why. They simply did. Every town has its stories. Norwyn Lake had one that nobody liked discussing. 30 years earlier, during the summer of 1958, 23 people vanished. Not from town, not from their homes. From the lake, boats were found drifting empty. Fishing equipment remained untouched. Campfires still burned on the shore, but the people were gone. No bodies were ever recovered. No explanation was ever found. Eventually, the story faded into local folklore. Most residents preferred it that way. Then, in the summer of 1994, Orson Walker came home. He had left Silverridge 12 years earlier and built a career as a documentary filmmaker in Chicago. When his father died unexpectedly, Orson returned to settle family affairs. He expected grief, paperwork, old memories. He did not expect to discover a locked metal box hidden beneath the floorboards of his father's workshop. Inside were dozens of newspaper clippings about the disappearances, old photographs, maps, handwritten notes, and a single cassette tape. Written across the label in black marker were 5 words: "Do not play after dark." Naturally, Orson played it. The tape began with static. Then came a man's voice, his father's voice, older than Orson remembered, shaken, afraid. "Orson, if you're hearing this, then I'm gone." A long pause followed. In the background, something crackled, like distant radio interference. "There are things I never told you." Another pause. The people who disappeared in 1958 were never found because nobody searched in the right place. Orson frowned. The recording continued. "I know where they went." Static exploded across the tape. For several seconds, all he could hear was distortion. Then his father whispered, "They went below." The tape abruptly ended. Nothing else. No explanation. No clues. Just those 2 words. Below. That night, Orson barely slept. The next morning he began investigating. By evening, he wished he hadn't. The underwater photographs had been taken in 1961. According to Walter, a team of divers accidentally discovered the structures while searching for one of the missing victims. Nobody publicly released the images. Federal officials arrived within days. The site was sealed. The divers were ordered to remain silent. Most complied. A few didn't. Every one of them disappeared. Walter never returned. Not completely. Orson could see it in his eyes. The old diver still lives somewhere inside those memories. "What did you find down there?" Walter's hands trembled. "A town. How old?" "No idea. Who built it?" Walter laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. "That's the problem." He slid another photograph across the table. Orson felt his stomach tighten. The buildings weren't submerged. Not exactly. The water seemed to stop at their edges, as if the town existed inside a bubble, a separate reality hidden beneath the lake. Then he noticed something else. Figures. People. Standing in the streets, watching the divers. 3 nights later, Orson rented diving equipment. Walter begged him not to go. Orson ignored him. By midnight, he was alone on the lake. The water was perfectly still. No wind, no insects, no sound. The silence felt unnatural, as though the entire forest were holding its breath. Orson entered the water. The cold hit immediately. His flashlight cut through the darkness. 20 feet, 40 feet, 60 feet. Then the lake floor appeared. Except it wasn't a lake floor. It was a road, a paved road, leading downward, into darkness. His pulse quickened. Walter had been telling the truth. The deeper Orson descended, the stranger things became. The water grew warmer, not colder, warmer. At 100 feet, he saw streetlights. At 150, he saw buildings. At 200, he reached the town. And then something impossible happened. The water disappeared. Orson stumbled forward onto dry pavement. His diving suit dripped water, yet the street around him was completely dry. Street signs stood beneath a starless sky. Storefront windows reflected pale light. A church bell tower rose above distant rooftops. The sign at the entrance read, "Welcome to Bellweather Population." 4981. Orson stared. The town looked alive. Not abandoned, not ruined. Alive. Lights burned in windows. Music drifted from somewhere far away. A dog barked. A screen door slammed. Yet nobody was visible. Every street appeared empty. Until he heard footsteps. Someone was behind him. The man looked ordinary, middle-aged, friendly, dressed in clothing from another era, maybe the 1950s, maybe earlier. He smiled. "You're new." Orson stepped backward. "Where am I?" "Bellweather. I can see that." The man nodded, as though that explained everything. Then he asked, "What year is it?" Orson hesitated. 1994. The man's smile vanished. For a moment, genuine sadness appeared in his eyes. "Still moving forward, huh?" "What?" The stranger looked toward the sky. The black, empty sky. No matter. A church bell rang somewhere in the distance. The man's expression changed instantly. Fear. Pure fear. "Go inside." "What? Now?" The bell rang again. Longer. Louder. All around town, lights began turning off, one by one, as if darkness itself were spreading through the streets. And somewhere beyond the buildings, something enormous moved. Orson ran. The stranger dragged him into a nearby house. Every curtain was immediately closed, every light extinguished. The man locked 3 separate doors. Then he whispered, "Don't make a sound." Outside, the bell rang a third time. The entire town fell silent. No music, no voices, no footsteps, nothing. Then came another sound, a slow scraping noise, moving through the street. The floor vibrated. Whatever was outside was massive. Orson peeked through a crack in the curtain. At first he saw nothing. Then he saw its shadow. It stretched across half the street, far too large to belong to any animal, far too large to belong to anything that should exist. The shadow paused, as if listening, searching, hunting. Then it moved on. Only after several minutes did the stranger breathe again, and quietly say, "Tonight, it didn't find anyone." But Orson couldn't stop thinking about the way he had phrased it. Tonight, as though eventually it always did. The stranger's name was Thomas Reed. At least, that's what he claimed. By dawn, he had relaxed enough to answer a few questions. The two sat in a small kitchen overlooking a deserted street. Outside, Bellweather appeared normal again. Children rode bicycles. People walked along sidewalks. Store owners opened their businesses. Everything looked perfectly ordinary. Yet Orson noticed something unsettling. The clothing, the cars, the advertisements. Nothing belonged to 1994. It all looked decades old, as if the town had been trapped in another era. Thomas seemed to notice his confusion. "You're wondering why everything looks wrong. Wrong isn't the word it'd use." Thomas nodded. "Then maybe impossible." Orson leaned forward. "What year is this place from?" Thomas stared into his coffee. "Nobody knows anymore." "What do you mean?" We stopped counting. The answer sent a chill through Orson. Thomas continued. "The last date anyone remembers was October 3rd. "What year?" "I don't remember." "You don't remember the year?" A sad smile crossed Thomas's face. "That's how it starts." Over the next several days, Orson learned more about Bellweather. None of it made sense. Nobody aged. Nobody died. Nobody left. The town existed in a permanent cycle. Every morning began exactly the same. Every evening ended with the church bell. And every night something walked the streets. The residents called it the listener. No one knew where it came from. No one knew what it wanted. They only knew the rules. When the bell rang, go inside, lock every door, turn off every light, stay silent. Those who broke the rules disappeared. Not died. Disappeared. Their homes remained. Their belongings remained. But every memory of them slowly faded. Photographs changed. Names vanished from records. Even family members forgot they had ever existed. The listener didn't merely take people, it erased them. Orson found that far more terrifying than death. At the center of Bellweather stood an old library. It was the only building that never closed. Inside, Orson discovered thousands of journals, generations of journals, each written by different residents. Many described the same experience, the gradual loss of memory. Pages often ended abruptly. Handwriting changed mid-sentence. Names were scratched out. Entire sections had become unreadable. One journal belonged to a schoolteacher. Its final entry read, "I know something important is happening. I think I've forgotten my daughter. There are pictures of her in my house. I don't recognize her face." Another ended with, "The bell rang early tonight." Nothing else, just those words. Orson spent hours searching through the collection. Then he found something unexpected, a journal belonging to his father. The journal was dated 1968, 10 years after the disappearances. Orson's hands trembled as he opened it. The first pages described an expedition beneath the lake. The entries grew increasingly frantic. "The town is real. The residents know more than they admit. The listener isn't the source." Orson turned pages faster. Then he reached the final entry. His heart nearly stopped. "The thing beneath Bellweather is waking up." Below the sentence was a rough sketch. A circle. Beneath it, a vast shape. Something sleeping. Something enormous. And beside the drawing, 3 words. "It remembers us." That evening, Orson confronted Thomas. The older man looked exhausted, as though he had expected this conversation for years. "The church," Orson said. Thomas froze. "What's beneath it?" Silence. Then Thomas whispered, "Everything." The church stood atop the highest hill in Bellweather. For decades, residents had avoided its basement. No law required it. No signs warned against it. People simply knew better. Yet that night, Orson and Thomas entered together. The staircase descended far below the foundation, past stone walls, past forgotten tunnels, past layers of ancient construction, until they reached a massive underground chamber. And there they found it. The thing from his father's sketch. It was larger than a building, larger than a city block. Its body disappeared into darkness beyond the limits of Orson's flashlight. At first he thought it was stone. Then it moved, slowly, breathing. The entire chamber trembled. Thousands of pale strands connected it to the ceiling, like roots or nerves. Each strand stretched upward into Bellweather, into every house, every street, every person. Orson stared in horror. The town wasn't built above the creature. The town was attached to it, feeding it, or perhaps being fed by it. Then one enormous eye opened, the size of a truck, and looked directly at him. The creature did not speak aloud. Its voice appeared inside Orson's mind, ancient, patient, vast. "You came back." Orson nearly collapsed. "What are you?" For a moment, the creature seemed to consider the question. Memory. Images flooded Orson's thoughts. Civilizations rising and falling. Generations living and dying. Names forgotten. Stories lost. Entire histories erased by time. Then he understood. The creature existed before humanity. It collected memories, preserved them, stored them. Every person who entered Bellweather became part of its archive. Not physically, mentally. Their experiences, their lives, their identities, all preserved forever. The disappearances, preservation. You trapped them. I saved them. The answer terrified Orson because part of him understood it. Without memory, every life eventually vanished. The sleeper prevented that, at a terrible cost. The creature offered Orson a choice, the same choice it had once offered his father. Leave, forget everything, return to the surface, or remain. Become Bellweather's next keeper. Protect the archive. Carry the memories of countless lives. His father had chosen to leave, but not entirely. That was why he had spent decades investigating, why he had left clues, why he had hidden the tapes. He had regretted his decision. Now the choice belonged to Orson. The sleeper was dying. Its memories were becoming unstable. Soon, Bellweather would collapse. The archive would vanish. Millions of lives would be lost forever. Unless someone took its place. Thomas quietly stepped forward. "I've done my time." The old man's voice trembled. "It shouldn't be me." Orson understood. Thomas had been waiting for decades, waiting for someone else, waiting for him. 3 years later, visitors occasionally reported strange things near Norwyn Lake. Some claimed they heard church bells at night. Others spoke of distant lights beneath the water. Most stories were dismissed. Tourist legends, local folklore, nothing more. But divers sometimes reported seeing a town far below the lake, a town with glowing windows, a town that shouldn't exist. And standing at the top of the church hill was a lone figure, watching, waiting, remembering. Some said it was Orson Walker. Others said it only looked like him. No one knew the truth, because nobody who followed the road into Bellweather ever returned with an answer. Only a memory, and memories, like deep water, hide far more than they reveal.